They say when you have everything, the silence is louder. I used to think money could buy solutions, that it could patch up pain, fill the absence of love, and wrap grief in gold. But no matter how many rooms my mansion had, none of them echoed with laughter anymore. No footsteps pattered down my marble halls. No bedtime stories. Just the soft hum of lights I never turned off and the silent weight of a son who couldn't speak. My name is Caleb Westin. I'm a billionaire, tech CEO, former coding prodigy, media ghost. You won't find me in magazines. I never wanted the spotlight. My company builds platforms that power some of the biggest names in AI today. But despite all my successes, nothing ever felt harder than fatherhood. Especially since my wife, Amelia, died 6 years ago, giving birth to the only person left in my world, Elian. He was born with cerebral palsy. Doctors said he might never walk, might never talk. And I was just a man who knew how to write code, not cradle broken dreams. For years, I buried myself in numbers, acquisitions, product launches. I hired the best nannies, the most specialized therapists, built a custom wing in our home for Elian's care. But I never truly showed up. I was there in body, sure, but emotionally, I was a ghost with billions. Until one winter evening, when fate brought us into a dusty little café and turned everything upside down. It happened on a Thursday. We were driving back from a board meeting in a sleepy New Hampshire town, some corporate retreat meant to help me reconnect with the executive team. I was exhausted. Elian, silent as ever, stared out the car window as snow started to fall. His nurse had called out sick, and I didn't want to leave him behind. So it was just us, a driver, and hours of cold road. Somewhere near the outskirts of a small town, the car started sputtering. We pulled over near a faded sign, Melody's Diner, home of real coffee and real people. It wasn't glamorous. Paint peeled off the wood siding, and the neon sign blinked like it was trying to give up. But inside, it smelled like cinnamon and old jazz records. I wheeled Elian in. I didn't expect anything more than a sandwich and a few awkward stares. But then I saw her. She moved like the room belonged to her. Not because of power or presence, but because of peace. Her name tag read Ria, and her voice had the kind of warmth that felt like a long-lost lullaby. Cold night to be out, huh? She smiled, setting a pot of coffee on the counter. Car trouble, I muttered, keeping my sunglasses on. No need to reveal who I was.
It was easier that way.
Her eyes shifted to Elian. Hi there, sweetheart, she whispered gently. You want something warm too? Elian didn't respond. He never did, not with strangers. But he looked up at her, really looked, and for a second I saw something flicker in his eyes. Connection. The cafe was nearly empty, just a few locals nursing soup and stories. I ordered something simple. Ria returned minutes later with grilled cheese and tomato soup. But what caught my attention wasn't the food. It was her interaction with Elian. Instead of placing the plate in front of me, she knelt beside my son. Ever played piano? She asked him softly. I blinked.
Piano?
I followed her gaze to the far corner of the cafe. There, next to an old jukebox and a dusty coat rack, sat a battered upright piano. The ivory keys were chipped, the wood faded. But it stood there like it had a story to tell. Elian's eyes widened. Ria looked up at me. Mind if I show him? I hesitated. No one had ever asked to do that. Most people looked at Elian with pity, or pretended he wasn't even there. But she looked at him like he mattered, like he belonged. Sure, I replied. She rolled up her sleeves, gently unbuckled Elian from his chair, and with a strength that stunned me, lifted him into her arms. He was getting heavier, but she didn't falter. She carried him across the room like he was something precious, not broken. She placed him on the old piano bench, then sat beside him. Her fingers hovered over the keys. "Wanna try?" she whispered to him. She guided his hand toward middle C. A single note rang out.
Pure.
Delicate. Like the first bird at dawn. Then another. Elian pressed one key after another, slowly, curiously. For the first time in, I don't know how long, he was engaged. He was alive. And then he smiled. Not a twitch, not a forced grin, but a full, beaming smile that lit up his entire face. My throat tightened. I looked away. I couldn't let anyone see the billionaire blinking back tears in a dingy café. That night stayed with me. I couldn't forget it, the way Elian had come alive in her presence.
The sound of that piano.
The way she touched a part of him I'd failed to reach in 6 long years. I wanted to thank her. But how do you thank someone for waking your son's soul? I reached into my coat and pulled out a business card. "This is for you," I said quietly as we were leaving. She looked at it, eyes squinting. "Westin Enterprises?" she asked. "Wait, you're Caleb Westin?" I offered a faint smile.
Guilty.
She looked back at Elian. "So, you're the silent genius who built voice-to-thought software for kids with speech delays?" I nodded. She looked stunned. Then she just smiled. "Didn't expect that. You're not what I imagined." I chuckled softly. "Neither are you." That night, back in my mansion, surrounded by robotic lights, voice assistants, and luxury I barely noticed, I watched Elian sleep. His hands were curled into small fists, but relaxed. I saw the tiniest hint of contentment on his face. All because of a woman who lifted him to a broken piano. That was the moment something changed in me. I realized I was building all the wrong things. I could spend another billion optimizing the next AI voice engine, but none of it mattered if I couldn't reach my own son's voice. So the next morning, I had the driver turn the car around. I was going back to that cafe. Back to the woman who had unknowingly played the first note in a brand new symphony. It had been years since I'd returned anywhere without a calendar reminder or a security escort. But something about that cafe called me back. It wasn't the soup. It wasn't even the piano. It was Rhea. And the way my son smiled when she touched the keys with him. I came back 2 days later. No business suit, no press team. Just a sweater, jeans, and Elian bundled in a scarf. The sky hung low and gray, the kind that smells like snow and nostalgia. The place looked exactly the same, quiet, quaint, slightly worn. Inside, a warm light glowed through fogged windows. Jazz was playing low again, like the cafe hadn't changed in decades. Rhea was pouring coffee for an elderly man when she spotted me. "You came back," she said, eyes lighting up. I shrugged, pretending it wasn't a big deal. "My son's been asking." In his own way. She gave Elian a smile and a small wave. His eyes darted toward the piano. And there it was again, that spark. Rhea knelt beside him. "You want to play a little?" He nodded. I nearly fell out of my seat. Over the next few weeks, I kept finding excuses to pass through town. Sometimes I'd claim I needed to check on a property. Other times, I told my team I was working remote. But the truth was, I just wanted to see what would happen next. Elian kept progressing in tiny ways. His posture improved. His hands became steadier on the keys. His eyes no longer wandered blankly. They followed Rhea's fingers with fascination. But it wasn't just my son who kept drawing me back. It was her. There was something profoundly real about Rhea. Her laugh wasn't practiced, her kindness wasn't performative, and she didn't treat me like a wallet. In fact, she barely treated me like anything other than a dad. And for the first time in years, I was okay with that. One rainy Tuesday, after Elian played a gentle 4-note melody, I asked Rhea if she had a minute to talk. She hesitated. "I get off in 15. But I have to head straight home. My mom's alone," and she trailed off. Then seemed to make a decision. "You know what?
Sure.
But only if you don't mind driving me home. It's walking distance, but this rain isn't playing around." That was how I ended up sitting across from her in the back of my SUV, Elian dozing beside me, as she pointed toward a modest street lined with aging brick homes. She lived in a duplex, 2nd floor, creaky steps. "This is cozy," I said carefully. She laughed. "You mean small?" "No, I meant what I said." She unlocked the door and invited me in. The inside was warm but worn. Bookshelves filled with classical music scores, framed photos of her and a boy, probably her son, and the unmistakable scent of chamomile and lavender. A woman in her late 50s lay resting on a couch, covered in a thick knit blanket. Oxygen tubes traced up from a machine humming beside her. "That's my mom. Stage 4 COPD," Ria whispered. She used to teach piano at the community college. Now most days she sleeps. Her voice tightened. "She raised me on music and hope. Now I raise my son on prayers and tips." I glanced around. There were toy cars on the floor, a cracked violin hanging near the kitchen, a keyboard missing half its keys sitting under the window. "You were a pianist," I said softly. She nodded. "Accepted to Juilliard. Didn't go." "Why not?" "My son's father didn't stick around. Mom got sick." Dreams have a funny way of falling behind real life. There was no bitterness in her voice, just a tired grace. I found myself visiting more often, not always with Elian. Sometimes just to bring groceries or help carry boxes, or fix the leak in her kitchen sink. I even sent a private nurse to check on her mom. Anonymously, of course. One day, she confronted me about it. "Was that your doing?" "The nurse." I sipped my coffee. "Maybe. I'm not a charity case, Caleb." "I know," I said. "But your kindness did more for my son than all my money ever could. Let me give something back." She looked at me, really looked, and then nodded. But I could tell she was still wary. I didn't blame her. One snowy Saturday, I invited her and her son, Evan, to my estate for a holiday dinner. I told her to dress casually. She didn't. She showed up in a second-hand green dress, her hair curled, her son holding a small toy wrapped in red paper. Elian greeted them at the door by rolling toward the piano room. No hesitation. No prompting. The two boys sat side by side, one walking, one wheeled. And Ria, she sat at the grand piano, like it was always meant to be hers. When she played, the room bloomed with warmth. She moved through Chopin and Debussy with the same grace she once poured coffee. Her eyes closed. Her body swayed. Elian mimicked her motion. I felt something in my chest tighten. Something old. Something hopeful. Later, after the boys had gone upstairs with my housekeeper, we sat in front of the fire. "You have everything," she said, watching the flames. I thought I did. And yet, I echoed, "You woke something in me I didn't know I'd buried." She didn't respond right away. Then she said, "Music does that. It finds the parts of us we locked away." I turned to face her. "Why'd you never try again? After your son was born? After your mom got sick?" She smiled faintly. "Because I didn't think I had permission. I thought dreams had deadlines." There it was, the sentence that struck me like a lightning bolt. Dreams had deadlines. No one had ever said it out loud, but that's how I'd been living. Like everything had an expiration date. Like Elian's happiness was impossible. Like love was something that died with Amelia. But what if it wasn't? What if dreams weren't dead? They were just waiting for the right song. A few days later, I made a decision. A big one. I called in a favor from the New York Conservatory of Music. I paid off an old student debt, donated to their scholarship fund. Then I offered Ria a full-ride scholarship. Flexible hours. Personal instructors. Even childcare for Evan. I asked her to follow the dream she abandoned. But she turned me down. Flat. This feels like pity," she said. "It's not. It's investment." "In what?" "In someone who changed my life." She stepped back. "You're used to fixing things with money, aren't you?" Her words stung. Not because they were cruel, but because they were true. I looked down. "Yes. But for once, I'm not trying to fix anything. I'm trying to free something. For you. For Elian. For me." She didn't say anything. Just stood there, breathing heavy. Then she whispered, "Give me time." A week passed. Then 2. I didn't hear from her. I feared I'd pushed too far. Then one morning my assistant walked into my office, phone in hand. "There's a video trending on TikTok. You might want to see this." It was Ria. She was sitting beside Elian at the café piano again. This time, a small crowd had gathered. Her hands moved effortlessly. Elian tapped keys beside her. awkwardly but joyfully. He even laughed.
He laughed.
The caption read, "Waitress teaches billionaire's disabled son to play piano, and this duet will melt your heart." It had over 10 million views. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. Then I heard a knock at the door. It was Rhea, still in her apron, hair messy, cheeks red from the wind. "I've made up my mind," she said. "Oh, I'll accept the scholarship, but on one condition." "Name it." "I want to teach kids like Elian. Music therapy."
Free.
I smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." She chose the hard path. Not the lavish one. Not the shortcut. Rhea wanted purpose, not perks. And that changed everything. She started her classes at the New York Conservatory in the spring, commuting 2 hours by train each way, juggling night shifts at the café, helping her mother, and raising her son. But every time she returned to my estate, her energy was electric. The way she moved, the way she spoke, it all had this new rhythm, like her heart was singing again. She'd play Elian's favorite lullaby each visit, and he'd hum along now, softly. The notes unlocked something in him I never thought I'd see.
Joy.
It had been so long, I'd forgotten what it looked like on his face. One night, she stayed late. Evan had fallen asleep beside Elian on the couch. My housekeeper had already retired. The fire was low. "I failed my first composition class," she said, slumping onto the armrest beside me. I smiled. Even Beethoven wrote a few bad sonatas. "Don't patronize me, billionaire," she teased, nudging me with her elbow. "You ever fail anything?" I paused. My first company. At 23. I lost everything. Lived in my car for 4 months before I got a temp job. Built a second business from scratch. That one stuck. She blinked. "You lived in your car?" "Luxury sedan," I said with a smirk. Still smelled like failure. We both laughed. And then we didn't. Because she looked at me, and I looked back, and suddenly the silence wasn't empty. It was full. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Of what?" "That this happiness isn't mine to keep." I reached for her hand. "Then let me hold it for you until you're ready." She didn't pull away. A month later, she played at her first conservatory recital. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't even public. Just a small, sunlit room with mismatched chairs and a dozen classmates. But when she touched the keys, the room stilled. She played a piece she wrote herself. Lullaby for the Lost. Inspired by her mother's struggle, her son's resilience, and, though she'd never say it, by Elian and me. I sat in the back, unnoticed. But I saw her glance up once, mid-phrase. Our eyes met. And I knew. She wasn't playing to impress anyone. She was playing to remember who she really was. That same week, Elian took his first unassisted step. One step. Just one. But he did it to reach the piano bench. And when he sat, his fingers found the opening keys to that lullaby. Only 4 notes. But 4 more than we ever thought possible. I wept. Right there, beside him, on the floor. Because I knew what it took to get to that moment. Years of pain, sleepless nights, missed birthdays, surgeries, specialists, and my own exhaustion pretending to be strength. And yet it was music, not medicine, that finally moved him. By early summer, I began funding a new initiative, one Rhea had quietly dreamed of, but never dared to speak aloud. The Resonance Project, a free music therapy program for children with physical and cognitive challenges. Rhea would be the first director. Classes would run in 4 cities to start. Dozens of instructors would be trained. Scholarships would cover transportation and instruments. She cried when I showed her the plan. "Why me?" she asked, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Because you gave a billionaire something no one else ever could."
What?
Hope. But success doesn't silence sorrow. Her mother passed away in July. Peacefully, in her sleep. Rhea called me that morning. Her voice was hollow. "She didn't suffer," she said. "I think she waited until I could stand on my own." I offered to fly in her family, pay for the service, anything. But she asked for just one thing. "Play her favorite piece at the funeral," she said. I hesitated. "I haven't played in years." She'd want it that way. I hadn't touched a piano since Amelia's accident. Grief turned my fingers into strangers. Every key reminded me of what I'd lost. But for Rhea, and for her mother, I sat at the old upright in the chapel. And I played. A slow, aching melody her mother once composed. Simple, tender, with just a hint of sorrow. By the time I reached the final note, the room was silent. Rhea walked up and embraced me, trembling. "Thank you," she whispered. "You brought her back for a moment." "So did you," I wanted to say. "You brought me back too." In the fall, the Resonance Project officially launched. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was quiet, attended by families, volunteers, and local leaders. Rhea gave a short speech. Not rehearsed. Not fancy. Just real. My mother used to say music was the voice of the soul. But for many children, no one ever listens. Today, we open our ears and our hearts. Thunderous applause. Even Evan clapped wildly, grinning at his mom like she hung the moon. Elian, now walking with light braces and a cane, stood beside me and whispered, "She sounds like music." I nodded. She is. One evening, after classes, I found her in the studio playing alone. A new piece. Something unfamiliar. "What's that one?" I asked. She paused, smiling sheepishly. "I call it For the Man Who Stayed." I laughed. "That title's too long." "Then shorten it." "How about Ode to the Rich Guy Who Got Lucky?" We both cracked up. And then, like gravity, we found each other's gaze again. "I've been meaning to tell you," I said. She tilted her head. "I'm not just building this program for kids. Oh, I'm building a future. With you in it." Her eyes softened. "You sure?" I've never been more certain. We didn't fall in love like fireworks. We fell like seasons shift. Quietly, naturally, unstoppably. Months passed. The Resonance Project grew faster than we imagined. News outlets started picking it up. Musicians began volunteering. Doctors called asking to collaborate. We opened 5 new locations by winter. And one snowy December night, I stood in front of a crowd at our first fundraising gala, speech in hand. But instead of reading it, I turned to Rhea, sitting at the piano beside Elian and Evan. And I did something terrifying. I dropped the cards, stepped forward, and knelt on one knee. Gasps rippled through the room. Rhea's hand flew to her mouth. "I once thought my life ended when I lost my wife." I began. "Then I thought it would end again when I learned my son might never walk. But then I met a waitress who lifted him to a piano and, without even knowing it, lifted me too. Rhea, will you marry me?" Tears rolled down her cheeks. She whispered one word. Yes. We were married in the spring. No velvet ballroom. No gold-trimmed chandeliers. Just a greenhouse in upstate New York, filled with wildflowers, music, and the only people who mattered. Evan wore a tiny tuxedo and carried the rings. Elian walked beside me, steady on his feet, eyes glowing as he watched Rhea float down the aisle like a sunrise in a white dress. She stopped in front of me and whispered, "Don't faint, Billionaire." I didn't. But when she said, "I do," I swear my knees nearly gave out. We danced to the melody she'd written, For the Man Who Stayed. I remember thinking, how did I ever live without this? Without her? Without us? That night, as the guests faded and the stars stretched above us, I stood outside with Elian. He was quiet, as he often was. But then he tugged my sleeve. "Dad," he said softly, "I'm happy." I knelt, resting my forehead to his. "Me too, son." It was the first time he'd said it in years. And it reminded me, this story wasn't just about love. It was about healing. Over the next 2 years, Rhea transformed the Resonance Project into a national movement.
Schools adopted her programs.
Therapists trained in her methods. Hospitals invited her to speak. She gave TED Talks, NPR interviews. She even met the president. But she never stopped teaching. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she was in the classroom, sitting beside kids others had given up on, helping them find the courage to press one key, then two, then entire symphonies. She wasn't just changing lives, she was raising them. And Evan? He thrived. Once withdrawn and closed off, he bloomed with the rhythm of a home filled with laughter, love, and lullabies. He learned piano faster than I ever did. By age 10, he could sight read like a pro. Mom says music is the sound our heart makes when it's not scared, he told me once. I smiled. Then yours must be singing all the time. He nodded. Because I'm not scared anymore. One fall afternoon, something happened I'll never forget. Ria was at a conference. I had both boys with me, playing in the music room. Elian sat at the piano, practicing a new arrangement of Chopin. Evan was sprawled on the carpet, humming a tune he'd just composed. And I watched. Just watched. The billionaire in me, the dealmaker, the empire builder, the man with glass towers and private jets, had vanished. All that remained was a father, a husband, a man who finally understood that riches mean nothing if your heart stays poor. Later that evening, Elian approached me. He looked hesitant. I want to play in public, he said. A real stage, like Mom does. My chest swelled. You sure? He nodded. It's time. 6 months later, we hosted our first Resonance Gala for Hope in Carnegie Hall. Every seat sold out. Donors flew in from across the world. Celebrities volunteered as ushers. It was a miracle in motion. And when Elian took the stage in his small black suit, the crowd hushed. He sat, placed his fingers on the keys, and played. Not just notes. Not just music. He told his story.
The pain.
The progress. The piano. Every keystroke a whisper of victory. When he finished, the room erupted. He turned toward the wings, where I stood, tears soaking my collar, and smiled. As years passed, our story kept unfolding. Ria's project expanded to 50 states. She founded a music therapy research institute. Elian went on to study at Juilliard, becoming a renowned composer for films that moved millions. Evan pursued neuropsychology, driven by a desire to help kids like his brother. And me? I handed my company to a trusted partner. I became chairman of the Resonance Foundation. And every night, I tucked in my 2 sons, kissed my wife's forehead, and whispered thank you into the quiet. Because all it took was a single moment, a waitress, a disabled boy, a dusty piano in the corner of a café, for my world to change. So if you're watching this right now, and you feel stuck, lost, unseen, let me say this. Your life can change in one choice, one kindness, one melody. I was a man made of metal and margins, but I fell in love with a woman made of music and meaning. And through her, I found the greatest riches of all.